Imagine you are standing in a beautiful garden. You see vibrant flowers, feel the warmth of the sun, and hear birds chirping. Now close your eyes and think, what happens to the garden if no one is there to see, hear, or feel it? Does it still exist? This question lies at the heart of George Berkeley's idealism, a revolutionary philosophical idea that challenges the way we think about reality itself. Berkeley, an Irish philosopher, argued that the physical world doesn't exist independently of our perceptions. According to him, all that exists are minds and the ideas that they perceive. What is the core of Berkeley's idealism? Berkeley's philosophy is rooted in simple yet mind-bending claim: to be is to be perceived. This means that objects don't have a separate, independent existence outside of our perception of them. For example, a tree in a forest only exists as long as someone is perceiving it, seeing it, touching it, or otherwise experiencing it. If no one is around to observe the tree, it doesn't exist as a physical object. Instead, it exists as a possibility waiting to be perceived. Why did Berkeley argue this? Berkeley was an empiricist, meaning he believed that all knowledge comes from our sensory experiences. However, he took this idea further. When we perceive an apple, what do we actually experience? We see its red color, we feel its smooth surface, and we taste its sweetness. All these qualities, color, texture, taste, are sensory perceptions. But can we prove that the apple exists independently of these perceptions? Berkeley says no. We only ever know the apple as it appears to us, not as some separate physical thing. Berkeley also attacked materialism. Berkeley rejected materialist idea that there is a world of matter out there, independent of the mind. He argued that the concept of matter is unnecessary and meaningless. Why? Because if matter is something that exists outside our perception, we can never directly experience it. Why invent an invisible, unprovable material world when everything we experience happens in the mind? For Berkeley, reality is a collection of ideas in our minds. The color red, the sound of music, the smell of flowers, all of these are mental experiences. The idea of a physical, the idea of a physical world is just a way of organizing these perceptions in our minds. What are the objections to Berkeley's ideas? A common criticism is, if everything depends on being perceived, does the world disappear when no one is looking? Berkeley's answer is this: God perceives everything, all the time. Even when humans aren't looking, objects still exist because they are constantly being perceived by an infinite, all knowing mind, God. This way, Berkeley maintains that the world feels continuous and real, even if it's fundamentally rooted in perception. Another question asked to Berkeley was, how can we share the same reality? If the world exists only in our minds, how do we explain that multiple people see the same tree or hear the same sound? And Berkeley's answer is this: God ensures that everyone's perceptions align. The tree exists as an idea in God's mind, and we perceive it because He allows us to. Science is based on the assumption that there is a physical world with measurable properties. Does Berkeley's idealism render science meaningless? Berkeley didn't deny the utility of science. He simply argued that scientific laws describe how ideas behave in our minds, not how material objects interact in the external world. Let's take a moment to imagine Berkeley's world in action. Picture a sunset. The fiery orange hues fill the sky, the wind caresses your face, and the sound of waves crashing soothes your mind. Now ask yourself, where is this sunset? In Berkeley's view, the sunset isn't out there, it's entirely in your mind, a combination of visual, tactile, and auditory ideas. What about the people watching it with you? Are they just in your mind too? Berkeley would say no. Their bodies are ideas in your mind, but their minds are separate entities. You're all perceiving the sunset because God ensures your perceptions align. And what happens when you turn your back on the sunset? Does it disappear? For Berkeley, the sunset continues to exist because God perceives it constantly. Berkeley's idealism feels very profound and even unsettling. If the world is nothing more than ideas in our minds, it challenges our sense of stability. Are we living in a kind of dream? Can reality be trusted? If everything exists in our perception, then the universe itself might be one vast interconnected mind. Some people find this idea deeply spiritual. It suggests that existence is inherently tied to our consciousness. How do we distinguish real objects from dreams or hallucinations? If both are mental experiences, where do we draw the line? Berkeley's idealism resonates with several modern ideas. It also resonates with simulation hypothesis. If our experiences are just ideas, it's not unlike being in a computer simulation where everything exists as information rather than matter. In virtual reality, we perceive and interact with a fully constructed world, even though it exists only as digital data. At the subatomic level, particles don't have definite properties until they are observed, echoing Berkeley's idea that perception creates reality. Berkeley's idealism asks us to reimagine reality as a mental construct, a world made up entirely of perceptions and ideas. Whether or not we agree with him, his philosophy invites us to question the nature of existence itself. Are we truly interacting with a physical world, or are we just navigating a shared dream sustained by the constant perception of a higher consciousness? Berkeley might argue that the answer doesn't matter, for as long as we can perceive, reality is as real as it needs to be. Thank you so much for listening.